And we are able to talk about the future land use, that 10,000 foot view. But that zoning level is a little bit harder for us to touch. Because that's really at the local jurisdiction level, that's at the county level.
Yeah, and I just
So
want
we're,
to
yeah, go ahead.
emphasize that there also is private property rights law that we have to consider, and so anything like that, we would need to work with the county attorney's office on whether or not that's even legal to consider. I don't know the answer.
Many
but-
counties across the nation have taken that approach.
Well, Florida has some very strong private property rights
Yes.
laws, so that is why
They're not strong enough.
a lot of the entitlements that are on the, well, it's very hard to take away somebody's entitlements to approved zonings. So it's something, we're writing it down and we will
Yeah.
explore it. But I just want to make sure everybody knows
Let me add
that.
to it, there's one piece that I didn't say, and that is, there is a provision already in statute for vacate a zoning. If you have a gas station or grocery store
Mhm.
and you tear it down,
Mhm.
you have 1 year to rebuild. I'd like to see that strengthened.
That's definitely something we can add to our points. And then, again, with those comment matrices, we'll make sure that all of those comments get to the right folks so we can get these discussions going. Yes?
The areas that can be improved, I believe it needs to be reviewed and updated to reflect current situation in Hillsborough County.
Yes?
And I think every one of the community plans, with the exception of those that have just been created, you can put a timestamp on it, I don't care, but they should be updated as well, because I was involved in creating the Balm Creek community plan, and that was 10 or 15, I guess, probably 15 years ago. It's outdated, because back then, Balm was a rural community, and there wasn't any, there wasn't any urban, anything urban
Right.
like in the area.
Yeah.
Now, it's not the case, so.
Excellent, excellent. Yes?
Building on Clara's statement, you can't take away property rights, but you can put in place now that if you want the zoning is good for 5 years. And if you don't use that zoning, it reverts back to what it was.
It's a code thing.
Yeah.
I believe we need to improve our density, and especially the infill bonuses should be eliminated. That's just my opinion based on our health, welfare, safety.
Okay.
And we really should, when we're planning ahead for future planning, is we really need to have some comprehensive language about density in regards to the health, welfare, and safety of whether our community can handle that density in a livable, sustainable manner.
I love it. Yeah, yes.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Does the county determine what the developer has to, like the mobility fee you were referencing, is that determined by each county, or is that an overarching state? Because the diversity from one end of the state to the next, like what the mobility fee should be would, I mean, you can't say like, okay, we're gonna develop this thing over here and the impact it has on the community is like,
Yeah, it's county by county, and
So the county
in each
determines
jurisdiction. So Hillsborough County has a different mobility fee from Plant City, for example. So each local government sets the mobility fee for their
So
area.
why wouldn't the county set the fee so that if it's being developed, that it represents the true cost of the community?
Well,
If it
I
doesn't
think
cover-
that's the process that they went through, and that I think that that's what they did. There's an extensive methodology that I would not attempt to explain to you because I can't say that I understand it, but to ensure that the fee does cover the
Right,
cost.
I mean, but you said it doesn't cover the cost, say like with widening the road when the road needs to be
Well,
widened.
because
And I know
their
you don't
share
wanna
of widening the
prohibit-
road is like, if they're not creating all of the impact that
Right.
causes the widening of the road. So they're paying for their share of widening the road,
Yes.
but it takes collecting the mobility fee from all of the people who are impacting the road And then, of course, there's the backlog of traffic that perhaps the mobility fee didn't capture. So just
And
to
then the fact that some of us live near county lines where we're impacted by traffic.
people from outside of our,
community, you know, our county.
yeah. So the developer's impact only does not cover the full cost of widening the road, I guess is my point, because they're covering the cost of their impact, not the impact of everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeff, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, and
And then I'll
that
get to
statement kind
Chris.
of goes along with what I have noticed in the county recently is, you know, a little while ago, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a moratorium put on B2 and WBR to zone and future land use categories. Historically, Hillsborough County was actually the largest share of building permits in the history of time. And that has actually shifted. Pasco now has more permits. In Hillsborough for the first time ever. This is about 10 years ago, Hillsborough had like 2/3 building permits. Now, it's dwindling, it's growing fast because it takes about 3 years for things to actually come out of the ground or from those effects. So we're seeing that start to dwindle. What we've seen, the problem is when you do that, which we have seen is you can't control your own growth. So you're not getting the money required to do your improvements. It's pushing the growth up to Pasco, down to Manatee, North Manatee, and Parish. Growth there is huge. And we're getting the burden of the traffic coming from the neighboring counties. We're not getting the funding from them developing in our county to support the infrastructure we need because we've forced it out. So that's the consequence of kind of shutting these categories down, is you're still incurring the burden of cost of these transportation issues, but you're not getting any of the revenue associated for addressing the problem.
Thanks,
So-
Jeff. And if I can just ask, if everyone will speak loudly so that we can make sure we get your voice on the recording. That way we can make sure that all of your comments are recorded and we can address them in the future. Yes, Grace?
When these mobility fees are collected for what damage they're gonna do for like Bloomingdale Avenue, and you've got 6 projects in 2 or 3 years on Bloomingdale Avenue, is all those fees held for repairing Bloomingdale Avenue?
I believe that would be mostly a jurisdictional. Oh, go ahead.
So I just want to say, we may need to have an expert on mobility fees.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but how I understand that it works is that there are mobility fee zones. So to your point, no, the money is collected within that zone and has to be spent on a project in that zone, but that project does not necessarily have to be directly on Bloomingdale Avenue. It could be,
How big is a zone?
they're pretty big, I don't, maybe we should bring a map of those.
I think our zone runs from Seminole Heights to Baum. I'm dead serious.
They're
Yes.
pretty big.
Oh, yeah.
There
It's
there are rural
District four,
zones
check it out.
and some zones within the urban service area. But we can get you some information on that, yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, I asked the question because Zephyr has been bombarded by larger density housing. And where it used to have 1 per acre, now has 72 for 18 acres. You know, I mean, it's crazy. And we still have all 2-way roads. Most of them, well, some of them are actually being paved. But that's a miracle, because in 36 years, that had not happened in Zephyr. And it just seems like if all those places that had to be allowed, we fought mightily hard for not allowed. But, yeah, I mean, you have your rules, and the planning commission does what they want, and they have saved our rural area so much lately, I just love it. And, but if those fees had been collected, we might actually have paved roads all over Suffolk, not just gravel roads and, 2-lane asphalt roads that have been falling apart for 30 years.
Excellent. And, like Melissa mentioned, we're happy to get you in touch with our mobility fee experts. So you can ask them all the questions and they'll be able to pinpoint exactly all those details for you. Yvonne, thank you so much.
One thing that I'm hearing as a recurring theme is the comprehensive plan can do only so much, and there are other things that are not coordinated as well. The transportation, schools, for example, don't seem to be a big part of the concurrency because the school board runs where they build schools and how many kids are going to be there. There's a transportation agency that's determining fees and builders, what their impact fees are. So I would like, if possible, a way for the comprehensive plan to be coordinated more with those outside entities that are controlling things that affect the growth.
Sure. So what I can tell you is that we definitely coordinate with all of those things, right? And for part of the next update, we are going to be working with the public schools to, within our governance section of the comprehensive plan, be able to work with them and update that section of our comprehensive plan. We also work, as I mentioned before, with our long-range transportation plan. As that's being updated, I think that will start later this year. And we'll continue the coordination of all of these updates as that happens.
Oh,
Right.
I forgot the Board of County Commissioners is the other big final word group, that doesn't have to follow this plan. Outreach for the public to know the right to their county commissioners or something important, because the plan doesn't drive us a 10,000 foot view that says, you mentioned, not everybody understands that the county commission can just do what they want.
Sure, so our land use is that 10,000 foot view. The comprehensive plan is 30,000 foot view. The zoning, the land development code, all of that, that is with the Board of County Commissioners, you're correct.
But
go ahead,
ultimately,
They
the
also
board,
sit on the board though.
yeah, ultimately, the planning commission is a recommending body. So we're gonna put together an update to the future land use element. The planning commission will review it, they'll make a recommendation, and that goes to the Board of County Commissioners. Ultimately, all decisions about what goes in the comprehensive plan or doesn't go in the comprehensive plan are made by the Board of County Commissioners. They adopt the plan, and then they approve changes to it, or they don't approve them. They approve zonings and other things that implement it or not. So ultimately, we present our best professional recommendation, but ultimately they make the decision. And I think some of those who've been involved in some of the recent studies, like in RB2, know that's how the process ultimately worked, is that, we put forward a recommendation and then they make changes to it.
Cool question, so hopefully I'm not derailing the conversation, but I wanted to ask you earlier, but then we moved on. Based on the current speculative percentage of growth that you mentioned, you said that there's 20% of land undeveloped or redeveloped or vacant. Do you have an idea of when you anticipate that 20% of remaining land to be gone?
And that's specifically within the urban service area. I don't know if we have a timeline for that. That's kind of hard to gauge.
So because you keep throwing out the number 2045, so I'm wondering where the year 2045 specifically came from.
Usually with our plans, we end up looking 20, 25 years out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of the numbers that we use because we like to update the comp plan every 7 to 10 years, so to ensure that it continually is updated.
I guess that's where it seems kind of odd because here we are 15 years trying to update and clearly massive changes happened in 15 years.
Right.
And now we're throwing out 2045, like why are we talking about 2045? Like we should be talking about 2035. The amount of growth that happens between that span of time.
Well, the statute guides us to have a 20-year plan. So that's what we're looking out to 2045 because that's what Florida statute guides us to.
Right, and those numbers that we were talking about before, the 350,000, the 170,000 more jobs, those come from the population projections. So those,
The state gives us numbers for the county.
I didn't think you were making.
No, I wasn't saying that.
So I think it's just a matter of, we understand that change takes time. And so we have to allow that change to take time, but we also have to plan for our future and help to guide that growth as much as
It's
possible.
happening a lot quicker than that.
I understand. Jack?
I was just gonna say, short, I don't have those long-term metrics in front of me on the short term, we have 10.6 months of vacant development lot supply, so that's a house, a lot you can build a house on, probably not today. Equilibrium for the market. The entire county. Equilibrium for the market is 24 to 30 months. So we're severely undersupplied the amount of lots that we actually need to support the growth we have in the county currently. And we're well under half of what we need currently today. And the plan is obviously needs updating at the time. That's what we're going to face.
Thank you, Chad.
Speaking about single-family residential.
This is single family.
That doesn't count.
Yeah.
Correct.
But that is the crux of the whole issue, I think all of us are talking about, is we all agree that there's, people moving in, there has to be development, things have to move forward, or we stagnate and we die on the vine. But we have to plan appropriately, and we're not doing it.
Yeah, and that's why we're relooking the plan right now.
But just because there's that need, the point I'm making is, just because that need exists, doesn't mean the county has a right or an authority to approve a development to occur. It shouldn't occur. There still has to be, we have to kickstart and put some of the planning in high gear and move forward with putting in place what's necessary to support that development.
And that's why they're doing this now. That's what this whole process is for.
There's just, based on those numbers, there's no way that 350,000 people will fit into the 20% of remaining USA left. That's impossible. So the USA's got to expand, guys. I mean, you just the numbers prove it. You can't put 350,000 people in 20% of what's left of the USA. You have skyscrapers left. You're building 10, 12-story skyscrapers to accommodate that kind of growth. And Jeff will back me up on that.
And it's
And we
not
should.
the most efficient.
You want 10-story skyscrapers?
Yeah, build up, not out, build up.
And let me have, Herbert, thank you so much. Okay.
I disagree with that. I think
I'm very concerned because we're not listening to what's happening. She's talking about health and safety. I want to know where the food's going to come from.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in Hillsborough County. We used to produce more food in this county than shit to stick at. Now, we can't, it's not even on the list of economic factors in Hillsborough County, except strawberries. But generally speaking, we're going to be a parking lot.
We are.
And it's going to be paved over. We're not going to be able to have any food that's locally grown or sourced. And everything's going to have to be coming in from Australia or New Zealand or wherever. And we have to accept it. I'm sorry, folks. We have to protect our farmers. And we have to protect that the rural service area and protect those farmers. That has to happen. If we don't do that, we are, we're killing a goose.
So I just want to add, with the health and safety, we have the second highest pedestrian death rate in the nation. In our county for over 10 years. We have the third highest crash rates. And in our community, in East and South County, we lose community members almost daily. We are the hot spots of our crashes. It is devastating. These are people's children, they're their fathers, mothers, grandfathers. And when we talk about density, we talk about future planning, yes, we need to address growth, but how we do it is what we're here to discuss. And to do it with all of those benchmarks and to speak about what's really happening and how we're going to approach it so we can change some of these major issues. Because density is not just, it is actually affecting our welfare and our safety. We see it every day. And then it affects your small businesses, and it affects your schools, and it's impacting our families and how we live on a daily basis. So I just wanted to add to his comment.
Thank you so much.
And I believe, Brian, I believe what you're trying to say is that before developers are allowed to develop, they have to have minimum standards, infrastructure before anybody is.
It has to be there or planned before
And,
it's
but,
recommended for approval,
Yeah.
because it gets recommended. It gets recommended by the planning commission, and then the county commission has to deal with that recommendation. My point is, why doesn't this process set forth the guidelines that doesn't allow the planning commission to move it forward for approvals to the county commission unless it meets that criteria? It's ready for development. It's that simple. We can keep trying to fix, this broken whatever, or or you get a concept of what you're trying to do, and then you fix the process so that it doesn't continue to, devalue my life. I'm a native. It's the life in this county is so much worse now than it's ever been in my life. It's terrible. It's a mental health issue because you can't do it. It's terrible. So we need to stop that.
I think one thing that hasn't been addressed is that we're having to accommodate more cars with all these roads. There are alternatives that aren't out there, like in my community in South Sun City Center, I think there's a bus that might go by, but, buses, trains, bike paths that are safe, that
Amen.
where people don't get killed.
Amen.
Absolutely.
So-
You bring up a really great point, because, one of those things, we've got all these people coming, right? We've got all these people that we have to plan for. And like you mentioned, the numbers don't lie. Where are they gonna go? At the same time, we wanna make sure people are safe, that lives aren't lost on our roadways. So how can this future land use update guide growth in the right places so that they're walkable, so that we have connections, so that we can get cars off the roads? What kind of things can we put in place with this future land use update that set all these other elements up for success? And that's what this update is really about. Yes?
So, early on, you said you had a list of things that are not on the payment. These are things we don't plan to change.
Yep.
So one of those was to not increase the incentive for infill.
What?
It was to not increase the incentive for infill. right?
Yes, the infill bonus will remain.
No, but not remain, but not go up. It sounded like it was like, it will stay in place. It will stay as is.
It will stay in place, that's correct.
Stay in place versus stay as is.
But we
So-
also
So I know that some of us are gonna have different, differently opinion about how to solve some of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm from the build up, not out school.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can put in the 10 and 12-story things in Tampa. That's where the jobs are, that's where the people are. You put them in Tampa, you build up. So you don't get sprawl. I came from Los Angeles, right? Los Angeles County, Riverside County.
Yeah.
It's one giant city for 80 miles.
Yeah.
Because they didn't build up at all. They
Right.
built out, right, because of earthquakes. So could the comprehensive plan look at, is the infill incentive sufficient? Should the infill incentive be higher to encourage denser in the more urban area like Tampa proper?
Absolutely.
To encourage, because there are some parts of Tampa that are really low density, big lots, older houses, et cetera, that there's maybe room for more people there and maybe desire to live closer to the city and not out and drive that 45 minutes.
I love that. And Scott, you actually did a fantastic segue into our third discussion. So we're talking about all of these things that are staying the same. What are we missing anything? Is there anything that we want to add? Kenneth?
I don't know if this applies to.
That question? Okay, someone else.
However,
It's okay.
I didn't want to let this slip. Mr. Beltran, I really appreciate your passion about trying to preserve agriculture. But I want to make sure everybody knows that Hillsborough County today is still one of the top 10 agricultural counties in the whole country. Number 3 in the state of Florida.
That's pretty sad for the country. What we have is in the top 10 now. That's pretty good.
Well, more valuable today than we were 30 years ago in terms of agricultural production. Yes, we no longer have dairies in Hillsborough County. That's sad. Citrus has basically disappeared, and there's disease issues with that. But high-value crops can thrive in areas of high-value profit. And it takes higher-value land to leverage so that we can actually borrow enough money to grow the high-value crops. I'm proud to say that agriculture in Hillsborough County is alive and well. But we have to be careful when we're talking about future land use. We have to be very careful with using the terminology of preserving farmland. The only way to preserve farmland is to keep farmland profitable. That's what we need to be concerned with. Putting things in place that allow the growers and ranchers to continue to be profitable, because they really don't want to sell their land.
Yeah.
They would just as soon be the stewards of it forever and pass it down multiple generations. Well, I think I'm telling the right story here. But if we're not profitable and we have guardrails around the land that we own, there's no exit strategy. So anything that the future plan looks at, I'm just saying we have to be very cautious about putting any kind of guardrails in place that the land can only ever be, unless it's chosen by the owner, the farm owner or the ranch owner, to put that land in some type of program that says it will always be, it's their choice.
Yeah.
I don't think the county the county needs to be very careful of boxing us in an area that says this is only ag forever. And if ag's not profitable, we have a real problem.
Yes. And
The land becomes valueless.
absolutely. And I'll say too, actually, Kenneth, you're right in topic. Because, one of our sections is that agriculture section that, we were going to do some minor revisions to reflect our current programmings. We got that in some input from county staff as well as the environmental protection and our agricultural committee. But, it will definitely be taking a look at that to make sure that as we update these future land use, we set in motion the ability for our farmers to be successful, right? And that almost even ties in with our economic development in a lot of ways too, which we'll be discussing at our August 8th meeting. So, fantastic. Yes?
I would like to know what the things are that would make it profitable and not to bind you, the farmers.
That's a great question. Is there anything that,
What can the comprehensive plan do to
No, I mean, you were saying that not to bind you so that the farms could be profitable and not to control, I guess.
Well, I think one of his issues don't tie the hands of the farmer
Yeah.
who owns the
So
land.
what-
But what could the comprehensive plan do to encourage the continued profitability?
and it may not be part of the comprehensive plan that can actually aid in the perpetuity of farmland or farmers and ranchers. But I think maybe the land development code might be more of a, something that could be very helpful. For example, and we're working with other parts of the county government to help eliminate some of the roadblocks that we have.
Great.
We're trying to be able to build farm worker housing. Right now, we're a long ways short of what we need for farm worker housing. And some of the rules that apply to urban housing should not apply to farm worker housing. We're using more and more H-2A, which is guest workers from other countries, because there's simply not enough domestic supply of workers to cover what we need. So, but in terms of tying the hands, I think is a good way that you put it. We can't allow the county to have an overlay in an area that would suggest we're going to put an agricultural overlay on this area because it's only ever going to be used for agriculture forever. That's a disaster.
Yes.
That drives the value of the land away. We can't borrow enough money to farm, and if you go broke and you have your hands tied to that extent, your, you know, your properties being sold on the courthouse steps.
One thing that's missing
Yes.
is climate change adaptation.
Climate change, excellent. And our sustainability. So that is something that we're going to be discussing also on August 8th, but we'll definitely keep that in mind. Is there something specific you wanted to bring up about that?
Well, I've seen development proposals near the shore,
Mm.
and, you know, a lot of the zoning does say the housing has to be built up.
Yeah.
Above, like 12 feet above or something, and they're trying to
That's
not do
more
that.
environmental.
Mm-hmm.
That would be environmental.
Environmental, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, comprehensive plan should, you know, take that into account and say, you know, that there has to be room for adaptation for climate change.
That's a really good point. So you had your hand up.
I was going to say, infill is staying, and to your point, in the city of Tampa, building up is appropriate. But in many parts of what is actually the urban zone, it is not appropriate. So I believe that it should be recommended, and we should discuss urban infill not applying to certain planned areas, that it is not appropriate to build up to, you know, 6, 10, 15 stories, where it completely goes against the entire plan, where it doesn't go for the community. It's not, you know, it's too dense and things like that. So we're seeing a lot of infill that's not appropriate for the community that it's built in. And that would be the balance of dealing with the fact that the urban service area includes the city of Tampa, and then, you know, what is suburban, but there's a huge part of the urban service area in East and South County, and I would say even North County, that actually is rural. We have horse farms. We have farms. So we don't look at ourselves and plant communities in the area that are not urban.
Right.
So I think maybe we can have that conversation in future planning and how we frame that, but I don't know if we can, but that's just my point.
That's a great idea.
So, yeah.
Any other sections that, yeah,
Just kind of to piggyback on both these comments.
yeah,
In the mixed-use multifamily push, I'll call it.
yeah,
Who knows Winthrop? Anybody know Winthrop?
yes.
Winthrop is the prototype mixed-use economy. You can work, live, anything you want, you can do. Now, the problem is, you guys can pull out your ears. The problem is developers are using using bonuses, and they're not building a Winthrop. They're building an apartment complex with a storage shed and a gas station, okay? I think if we're gonna plow down this multi-family mixed-use path, let's make sure